Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This episode has been brought to you by the Wine to Wine Business Forum 2022. This year will mark the 9th edition of the forum to be held on November 7th and 8th of 2022 in Verona, Italy. This year will be an exclusively in-person edition. The main theme of the event will be all-round wine communication. Tickets are on sale now, so for more information, please visit us at winetowine.net.
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Hello, and welcome to Voices. Today, I am so happy to welcome Pardon Taguzu to the show. He's one of the 4 sommeliers from Zimbabwe who were featured in the recent film Blind Ambition, and it documented their journeys from a pretty terrible personal refugee ship all the way through to representing their country at the World Blind Tasting Championship. And Pardon was the co-founder of African Wines in the Netherlands and SoloVino with the D'Alba family, and now he focuses his time and attention on his own company, Taguzu Fine Wine Imports and Exports. And he's also moved into the world of winemaking with his own label, Dzimbahwe Brands. So thank you so much for coming to the show today. I'm really excited to talk to you about everything you've been up to. Welcome to Voices.
Thank you very much for having me, Cynthia.
Oh, it's a huge pleasure. So this is such an amazing story. A lot of our listeners will be, either in the midst of watching Blind Ambition or getting ready to watch it soon. I want to sort of get the backstory out there so that people know what to expect, because it's a really cool and very inspiring story. So I know you were born in a very rural spot in the Honde Valley in Zimbabwe's highlands. And from there, you went on to get a degree in economics in Harare and an MBA. I'm just wondering, how on earth did you go from being a business student and a marathon runner and being interested in sports psychology and finding yourself all the way over here at the high end of the wine world? What happened?
Yeah, it has been a long journey. I think also what was the main factor is you really do not choose your destiny. Coming from a business perspective from the University of Zimbabwe and going into sports psychology, I never thought that I would end up doing wine, because I come from a Christian family, which the norm is you basically get your grades, you find a white collar job, and you start your own family. You just and a straight student, and in my family as well, alcohol smoking is also prohibited as well. Trying to listen to my only single parent, because my father passed away when I was very small. And I was, raised by a single parent, so that was the norm. But during the 2006, 7, 8, things were not really going well for Zimbabwe, and I witnessed this firsthand as well, because at that time I did a small internship with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and this is when the economy was really crumbling. And we had hyperinflation. And at that time as well, the economy was basically living with $1 per day, which was so ridiculous. I moved to South Africa, just looking for greener pastures. Of course, my sister was already set up in South Africa, and she invited me to go to South Africa. She's just set me up with a job as a runner, because when I moved to South Africa at that time, it was in April. And there was an event which attracts quite a lot of winemakers from all over the world, and also wine enthusiasts as well, and journalists. It was called the Olive Festival, and I just helped as a runner at the Royal Hotel in Ruby Castile, which is an hour away from Cape Town. I started asking questions from these guys, like, okay, guys, how do you get to know this stuff? Are you, when you talking about wine that you smell all these aromas. Does it mean that when the winemaker is making the wine, is putting in some of these flavors, or what is going on? I was that curious to actually understand the subject. I ended up actually, using the internet to finding more information. How can I actually take it upon myself to make it a profession? Because it also it encompasses everything that I like, which is traveling, food. Yeah, and I ended up founding the Cape One Academy, which is the body that actually in South Africa gives wine education. And I started enrolling with them, with their introductory course, which I aced with flying colors, and I was more curious, and I went for my certificate. And when I was doing my certificate at that time, we had also a tutor who is the facilitator for WSET in South Africa. Her name is Kathy Marston. So when I met with her after the lectures, she actually introduced me to WSET, and she explained to me that if you want to excel in this field, if you want to work in different countries, WSET is well recognized in many countries. So it's better if you actually consider to do that as well, side by side with Cape One Academy. So I did the Cape One Academy. I finished my certificate, and then I started enrolling for WCT2 at the same time. And at that time, I was also moving to my diploma as well for Cape One Academy. So I was doing quite a lot of studying, but it was a no brainer for me, because my background is basically, it's I'm a bookworm, when it comes to studying. So then I did that. I did my WSET until to the diploma level, and also the Cape One Academy as well. And because where I was actually living in Rebecca still with my sister, it's a very small valley, but it houses some of the great winemakers from South Africa, and you basically have greatness thrust upon you. Because these guys, they make some fantastic wines. They are really well known winemakers. The likes of Ibn Sadi, Adi Badenost. These guys are very iconic, well traveled. They made wines in different regions. Spain, France as well, and they brought the culture to Rubika still. So I did a little bit of work as well in the vineyards with these guys. Just trying to also understand exactly what is the process of winemaking. What really is the energy that gets into the process. Yeah, and I got promoted to become a waiter at Royal Hotel, and at that time as well in the valley, Joseph was also working at a different restaurant, and we did a couple of tastings together. I could just save my gratuity money, which I could get from guests, and go to Pick and Pay, buy different kinds of wine, and sit down, try to taste and try to identify what is wine.
This is an amazing story. You just referred to Joseph, who I happen to know is Joseph Defana, who's another one of your colleagues who was in Blind Ambition with you, the documentary. So I want to take a look at this for a minute, just because I think you're kind of letting this go by as this very gentle story, when I know it was really a lot harder than that. I've heard you say too that when you first met Joseph and you were first getting into wine at the Royal Hotel, your first glass of wine was a Chenin Blanc after work one day, and you thought it was horrendous. You thought it tasted sour and terrible and bitter because your palate wasn't used to it. So there was a lot more to overcome than just studying up here. You had to sort of change your whole outlook. So I think this friendship with Joseph that developed is really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, so Joseph was already set up in the valley because he came before me, and he was also studying wine as well before me. Joseph was also friends with my brother-in-law. So the valley is quite small, so it's more everyone who stays in the valley. It's more like family. Yeah, my first glass, I still remember it vividly. It was a Chenin Blanc from it was Babylon Speak Chenin Blanc. Yeah, he gave me one glass, and I drank my first taste was like, okay, this is quite awful. It was very sour. It was too acidic for me at that time because I didn't understand. I didn't understand the wine, and I didn't understand how to appreciate, the beverage. But nevertheless, I went on to finish the glass, and then I went to a second glass, and then at the end of the day, we smashed the bottle, and I could not go to work for the next coming 2 days, because I was sick. My body was not used to the beverage. Also later on as well, because he was also the first one to move from the valley, and then I also followed as well to the city, and we had this group of Zimbabweans. We always meet at tastings, and we always taste together. We always share ideas, on food and wine pairings, what we are studying at that moment and stuff like that. So it really helped to have someone who actually knew the path before I actually walked it.
It's really nice to hear that there's as much of a sort of a family and a support system in the wine world, in South Africa as we tend to find in other places. I think the people who are most successful always feel like they have a support group, either their family, their friends, their people they work with and study with. So, but it's interesting because this idea that you had never really had wine before, and didn't really like it at the beginning, we both agree that a lot of wine is about personal experience. And there's a lot of traditional wine language that doesn't really suit a huge segment of new young wine consumers. And people are always referring to, an aroma wheel, which was, invented by, a white Western woman. It doesn't really correspond with an African culture. So how did you decode wine when you hadn't really been exposed to things like gooseberries and all of that stuff, and didn't know wine before, so you were studying up?
Yeah, wine is about culture. It's about community. It's about personal experience, and it should be a beverage that sits comfortable with any culture. Referring to the aroma wheel, I think it's a good starting point, but it doesn't really correspond, especially with all the cultures. And not to take anything away from it, but I think it's quite shallow. It does not really suit every other culture. And from where I was coming from, I was already reading about wine, have the aroma wheel. I tested Chenin Blanc. They talk about aromas that fruits that I've never encountered in my life. I tested Sauvignon Blanc. They talk about gooseberries. And for me it was really hard to really nail the wine, in a blind tasting until I, started to actually read about these fruits and actually relating to the environment I grew up and also the wild fruits from Zimbabwe that I grew up eating. That's how I decoded it. Started to actually put my markers and pointers in different wines, according to what I know, according to the fruits that I know, according to the surroundings that I've been exposed to. You have a sense of smell that you're born with, that literally from onset, when you start smelling and identifying things when you're young, that actually stays in your it stays in your vocabulary, and it stays in your mind as well, such that you can relate to any other flavor or any other taste that you might get later in life. So for me, that's what I started using as markers, especially when we were doing blind tastings. I could pick up a very unique plant, which is we call it tsine, or it's called in English, it's called blackjack. I always pick it up in Sauvignon Blanc. I always pick it up as well in Cabernet Franc as well. It really made sense using my own vocabulary, but also giving reference as well to the aroma wheel, which I think still it really needs to be broadened up to actually get everyone who's in different corners of life, have had different upbringing, on the same page.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I'm a wine educator too, and a judge in various countries, and I think people, especially people who are new to the wine world, success only comes when you can really create that personal workable vocabulary system that connects you. And I think you're absolutely right. The wine industry as a whole, if we want to, put our money where our mouth is and really be inclusive, we need to expand the concept of the aroma wheel, which it's a very useful tool, but I think it's time to expand that concept. And so many wine pairings now are, with a French wine, with, potentially an Asian food, crossing cultures, bringing different wines and different foods together. And that's not possible if we don't have a more global language to talk about wine. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, and you got to your first competition in 2015 with Team South Africa. So tell me a little bit, how did this happen? What got you guys up to competition stage, and what created Team South Africa?
Italian Wine Podcast, part of the Mama Jumbo Shrimp family.
Like I said, we always met at different trade tastings, and by nature, Zimbabweans we're competitors. We were quite curious. For me, I started going out to competitions. I did the best young sommelier for South Africa, which was in 2017, where I came the first runner-up. I was also doing the South African blind wine tasting championship, which Jean-Vincent Redon organizes. So this competition is actually done at a regional level and at a national level. Amongst ourselves as well, we have also Tinashe and Malvin as well that competed before as well at a young challenge show for Inter Hotels as well. So we had the competing part in our team, and for me, I did that, and then I also did the South African Blind Wine Tasting Championship as well, which for the first time, I think, my vocabulary of wine and identifying wine was not really that great. In 2015, I think I was in top 20 on a national level. And, what also helped me when I moved from Ruby Castillo to Cape Town, I had more access to more people, and I had more access to trade shows where I could taste different wines, and I could travel to the wine lands as well with more ease. The wine lands were like close and more accessible to me. So I developed my vocabulary, I developed my palate, and 2017 we all entered in the South African Blind Wine Tasting Championship, and I was actually the third best tester in South Africa at a national level. At that time, we also had in top 15, we had Malvin, Tinashe, and Joseph. So this was actually enough people to create a one solid team. But we didn't know how to do it. Of course, we were advised by JV that it's useless for me to take one participant from your team, and then I take them with me. So best you can do is to create your own team in Zimbabwe.
I mean, all of you were top tasters, top sommeliers. That's a super strong team. It was a good idea to put the four of you together.
Yeah, definitely it was. And, and at the competition, we were the only team that was actually equipped with sommeliers that are actually working on the floor. Everyone else was in the trade, off trade, doing it for fun. But these were well seasoned testers as well. These are the best palates in the world. So we knew what we were doing, and we got there on merit. So.
Well, your team was also the only team composed completely of Black contestants, and that's this wasn't 100 years ago. This was just a few years ago. This was 2017. So it's really disheartening to know that was still going on in 2017. But I'm just wondering, on top of the pressure of the competition, to be the only team in the room that is all Black men, how did that affect the team in terms of pressure? And I know you were a marathon runner. Clearly, you're a marathon wine guy as well. Competition seems like you thrive on it. How did you guys sort of deal with that pressure? and the spotlight of that?
Yeah, there was a little bit of pressure there. For us, we took it upon ourselves, like, guys, we are here, we deserve to be here. We are the best testers where we're coming from. So if we are the best testers where we come from, we've mastered this wine world. We can be the best amongst the best in the world. Of course, you kind of feel out of place at some moment, especially when we got to the competition and seeing lack of diversity, which it's quite disheartening. And this is not happening only just at a world class level. This is happening, in different sectors, in different countries. The wine world needs to actually diversify. It has been traditionalized for a long time. Still, you see the key players still trying to traditionalize it and not accepting that people of color can also be involved in the wine business, can also be top sommeliers in the world. So there was that moment when you feel a little bit out of place, but then when it's competition time, we said to ourselves, guys, we're here. We are here. We deserve to be at this table. We are some of the best testers in the world. Then we show them what we are capable of.
Well, you clearly did an incredible job, because it was a very successful year, not just for your team, but also for you personally. You became the second in the national contest sponsored by Moët and Chandon for Best Young Sommelier. And then you were third best taster in another blind tasting competition. And eventually you became a certified sommelier at the Court of Master Somms in Europe not too long ago. I think 2021, was it?
Yeah, 21, yeah.
Yeah, well, all of that achievement in the wine world would be, significant for anybody. But to have risen as quickly as you did, to be where you are now, is pretty incredible given the challenges that you faced. And Zimbabwe is not a place that grows grapes or makes wine. So, South Africa was the right place for you to be. But I'm wondering now, what would you say to a young person in Zimbabwe who wants to get involved in the wine world? What advice would you give them?
Well, the advice I would give to someone wanting to get into wine now, it's not an easy road. If it was easy, there wouldn't have been, the Denzel Washington of this world. I would not be where I am if it was easy as well, because everyone else could do it. I would say, stay determined. Always believe in yourself. Always go for the impossible, seemingly, and keep your mind at, keep your focus, and stay humble.
I like that. And I think it's important to remember that, go for the impossible, because that's how things move from impossible to possible. So I want to talk with you a little bit about what you've been doing since all of that excitement, because you haven't sat around doing nothing, I happen to know. You describe yourself as a winepreneur, which I just love that word. You went from being sommelier in top Cape Town restaurants, and starting up African wines and starting up SoloVino with the D'Alba family from Italy. Now you're in the Netherlands. What happened? Again, you seem to be one of these people who, nothing gets in your way and no challenge is too big. So from Cape Town to The Hague, how did that happen?
Yeah, that was exciting, and like my mother used to tell me, like, just treat everyone that you meet like it's the last time that you see them. I was in Cape Town of working as a som, right, and then I met these guests that later became my business partner. But I was just being professional, delivering the best service that I could, to this family that that came to the restaurant, which ended up falling in love with my service. This was the D'Alba family, and after that, we exchanged contacts, and they proposed me to actually travel to the Netherlands to see what business opportunities we can actually build together. And I wanted to actually move into distribution, which I had done my research. I knew that South African wines can thrive a little bit more with with someone who understands the wine in Europe or in the US. So I didn't have a plan at that time. I was just basically saving up some money and trying to see what I could actually do next. They asked me a question. So what do you want to do? And I told them that I would want to move into distribution. I would want to be in a different space, import South African wines, especially wines that are coming from people of color, women in wine, and also the small wineries, that do not have the capex to actually export these wines, which also hit home for them. It was a really good concept, and it didn't take time. I created the portfolio African wines for the Netherlands, and we started exporting wines to the Netherlands, with very small brands, women in wine. I imported first in the Netherlands wines from Aslina Wines, from Nsiki Biela, who's one of the first people of color winemakers in South Africa.
She's an amazing woman, incredible.
Yeah, really incredible, and incredible story as well. And I also imported as well first the wines of Joseph, which is Mosi wines, and also Tinashe Kumusha wines as well in the Netherlands. So that was the jump from Cape Town to the Netherlands, and setting up that, pushing the wines into the market, creating visibility. 2 years down the line, I decided to go my own way. Still do import and export as well, but solely for myself, for a 100% African owned company, which is the first of its kind in Europe. And and I kept on going again. Worked with all top restaurants in the Netherlands, Michelin star, with some of the best chefs in the world. Did consulting, creating wine lists for these restaurants as well, doing wine programs, wine trainings as well. Also still selling wines.
That's, again, such a huge accomplishment and a big undertaking. There's a lot of moving pieces to starting up your own business, especially importing and exporting South African wines, which were completely uncommon in the Netherlands. But I want to quote something that you wrote, which I think is really beautiful. You said, "In a world where our tongues are getting us into deep trouble and our noses are suffocating from minding other people's business, I found a better use for the two most important organs, and I'm proud to say I owe the success to them, and I'm grateful that they did not lead me astray." So I love that confidence. I think that is awesome. And you have now started your own wine brand as well as your importing and exporting business, which is super risky. So I just wonder, what drove you to make wines, and what wines are you making? You were already importing, exporting, you're already a top som, and now you're going to make the darn wine. What was the incentive?
As a som, you have to think outside of the box. You just don't have to think a flow of service. When you actually get to that level, that you're no longer excited about service, but you're excited about actually the experience. That you finally give to the clientele, and also being a different judging panels, and understanding as well the different palettes that are in different markets as well. The process of creating that fine beverage was always exciting me. Like, I really want to be the guy behind the label. I need to be able to communicate my story, to inspire someone through this beverage. I started contemplating and thinking, okay, I need to start a business in wine, because I'm kind of like hitting the ceiling now. I've done the floor, I've done the service. I'm doing the blind tastings at a world champion level, and I have this experience of judging wines. I understand the beverage, and it's now time that I feel the ceiling is coming close to me, but let me move a little bit step further and create the experience from what I understand and from what I think people would appreciate, listening to my stories and drinking a different wine, which is quite crazy, which has been made by the first Black African in Europe to actually create such a brand. So yeah, I then started looking at who is best to actually work with. I chose Austria, which is one of my favorite wine regions. I just made my maiden vintage in Weinviertel, which is above Wachau and Krems. So this is to the northern part of Austria. I made 6 different wines. I made a Grüne Veltliner, and I also made a Rote Veltliner, which is also one of my favorite white wine grapes from Austria. But basically, the grapes are actually a little bit pinkish, so it's quite a very interesting grape, which is found in the northern part of Austria. And I also made as well a Riesling, which is my favorite grape from Germany. And I made a white blend which I named after my mother, which is called Cuvée Betty Blanc. So Betty was my mother's name, and it's a blend of Roter Veltliner, Riesling, and also Grüne Veltliner. And then I also made rosé as well. The rosé is made of Zweigert, 20% of Cabernet Sauvignon. And then I made a Zweigert, 100% Zweigert as well.
You've inspired me. I think I'm lacking in ambition. I've been a somm and a wine educator and a wine judge, and I am loving being a podcaster and a wine writer. But I think maybe I need to sit back and think about whether I should be making my own wine one of these days. Your labels on your bottle are really unique, and they're really beautiful. And I'd love to know where the images come from.
How I interpret, the wine world, it's about culture, it's about the community, it's about people sharing, that fine beverage. Same as that is what transcends to my labels as well. The picture on my label depicts Great Zimbabwe, which is one of a very old traditional monument from Zimbabwe, which was built in the 1800s. This is basically, these guys, they built these walls just basically by stacking stones on top of the other without any cement or any mortar. And these walls have stood the test of time. They represented, a community which was under one chieftainship, and it's a community which, it really gives you the sense of belonging, sense of community, sense of working together, sense of sharing as well. Which is what I think is the message that I'm trying to give also to the wine world, to people in wine, to the wine community as well, that, wine is about culture, wine is about sharing, it's about sharing ideas, it's about sharing businesses as well. And it's about the culture that we create, surrounding this beverage. And yeah, for me as well, I also wanted with this label for everyone to really feel comfortable when they're holding my bottle, being curious and wanting to know what is the story behind such a cool label.
It works. It's a beautiful image. You're also on the board of BLACC, which is South Africa's Black Cellar Club. I think this is pretty important work. So I just want to ask you about what you're doing there. What's your role?
So Black Cellar Club is actually it's actually a club which was formed in 2016. This is basically a board that represents the minority in wine, or scouts for opportunities in education, and supports young wine enthusiasts, young black sommeliers in South Africa that really want to find their way in the wine world. Yeah, so I'm actually on the executive board there. Yeah, that's basically what we do. We champion education and also representation as well when it comes to the wine world, to black wine sommeliers and upcoming.
I think this is one of the most important things that we can do to help our industry heal and grow and be better in the future. I think education is the key. But I just want to ask you, where do you see yourself going in the next couple of years? You've got your import and export business going. Now you've got your wine label going. Are you looking at doing a master of wine? What are you looking at? What are the goals?
Yeah, the MS definitely is in the pipeline. But for now, I'm focusing on creating a recognizable wine brand, which is Dzimbahwe, and I would like to create a brand that people believe in and that is visible in all the markets. I'm talking about the US, China, in England, everywhere. I also would like to keep on pushing, especially education as well, especially to young black people that are actually upcoming in the wine industry, and also just to make sure that they are comfortable as well in the international scene as well.
That's great. I wish you all the very best for the future and for all your endeavors. I hope I'll be able to try your wine in the very near future. And thank you hugely for giving us your time today and telling us this incredible story of everything you've been up to in your very short time in the world of wine, and your great success. And I'm just delighted for you. And I hope that your future carries on as bright as these years have been for you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, and thank you very much for having me. And thank you very much for listening to all your listeners as well.
Huge, huge, huge pleasure. I hope everyone goes out and watches Blind Ambition right away. So take care of yourself. Good luck with your wines, and thank you for coming.
We We hope you enjoyed today's episode brought to you by the Wine to Wine Business Forum 2022. This year will mark the 9th edition of the forum, to be held on November 7th and 8th, 2022, in Verona, Italy. Remember, tickets are on sale now, so for more information, please visit us at winetowine.net. Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to italianwinepodcast.com.